I just want to say something firstly about generosity and giving at the centre. So it sort of ties in with what Kuslasara was saying at the start of, or in the first half. We're looking at these teachings of the mind trainings where we're trying to cultivate particular qualities. We're trying to develop qualities that are associated with the Buddha. And one of the ways that we can do that is with the Metabhavana. So we did the Metabhavana practice in the first half. And another way that we can do that is to practice generosity or giving. And in a way, it's kind of, we're sort of doing the same thing as we are in the Metabhavana. So in the Metabhavana, we're trying to break down this separate sense of ourselves, and we're trying to reach out more and have more of a sense of being in connection with others. And there's a Buddhist word for that, which is for generosity, which is dana. And when we practice dana, we're doing the same sort of thing as well. And this centre runs on dana, it runs on generosity, basically. I was sat at the back just a minute ago and I was sort of just looking at this building and I was thinking this building would not exist if it wasn't for people's generosity. Originally this building was a burnt out Victorian fire station in the 1970s, believe it or not. And it would probably be something else now. I don't know, it'd be like some super duper offices or something. But it wouldn't be a Buddhist centre if people hadn't have been extremely generous in giving their time and giving their money to turn it into a Buddhist centre. And this class, all of us that help out on the team just help out because we want to and because we enjoy doing it, and we're practicing generosity basically. So nobody gets paid to help out at the centre. So that, you can do various practical things and you can help out and that sort of thing. But one thing that's really, really helpful is actually just to give money, because we need money to run the building and we need money to run courses and classes and so on. So if you can help us by giving a donation, that would be really, really helpful. You could give us a one-off, or what would be really helpful is if you could set up a monthly donation to us. And any amount is very welcome, so you could be as generous as you want to be, basically. But say, for example, if you were to think of giving like £15 a month or £10 a month or something like that, that would really help us to run our activities. So I was going to say, please think about doing that, but think about it and then do it would be really, really good. That's a little bit about generosity. And then I just want to say a couple of things about what is going on around the centre at the moment. There are a couple of things that I want to draw your attention to. So one is there's an intensive weekend meditation retreat for regulars. So that's for people who've been coming along for some time. So if you know both the meditation practice that we teach and you've been coming along for, say, 6 months or more, then Kuslasara, who you met in the first half of the class, and Dayanata are doing a weekend for regulars at Vajrasana, our retreat centre. So that would be a good thing to do if you've been coming along to the centre for some time. And it would be an opportunity really to spend more time meditating and deepen your meditation practice. I mean, we always say this about retreats, but I think the nicest thing about being on retreat, personally speaking, is actually just the atmosphere of doing that with other people as well. I was talking to Henry, I don't know if he's here, where's Henry? I was talking to Henry in the tea break, and we were having a nice chat about retreats, and we were talking about solitary retreats that you do on your own. And I really enjoy doing solitary retreats, but it's lovely doing retreats with other people as well. And it's just lovely to do that. It's a really lovely atmosphere to practice with other people on retreat. And there's also a working retreat from Sunday the 19th to Friday the 24th of September, also at Vajrasana. So that means you'll be on retreat and you'll be doing the things that we do on retreat, like meditating and having free time and going for walks in the country, that sort of thing. But you'll also be working to help with the upkeep of the retreat centre as well. And because of that, I think working retreats cost less to go on than regular retreats. So it says the program includes work periods, study, discussion, meditation and ritual. That's full for men, that retreat, but there are still women's places available. So those are 2 retreats you can think about going on, and think about supporting us financially as well. Okay, and now I'll hand over to Subhadramati.
great. Thanks very much, Akasha Mitra. And yeah, really nice to see everyone. It's a while since I've been to this Dharma Night class, and it's terribly exciting seeing so many people here in the shrine room, and also knowing that there's many of you watching from various places. I had a little peek in the tea break and saw Shobit from India is here, and many of my friends from Ireland are here. So yeah, if you're watching online live, do say hello in the chat to each other. And we've got Mircea, I'll probably pronounce your name wrong, haven't I? Mircea, is that right? Mircea, who is on tech, so he's going to make sure that those of you watching online are connected with me and with everyone. So good. So what I'm going to do tonight is talk some more about these 8 verses for training the mind, and hopefully I'm going to leave some space for you to ask some questions. Well, actually I'm going to ask you some questions, and hopefully I'll leave space for you to actually respond to them. And as Kusasada said, this is part of a series. I think this is week 5 or something in the series, but hopefully each week stands alone as well. So if you're here for the first time to the series or even to the centre, that should still hopefully work out. So, yeah, so on Boxing Day in 1993, Bhante Sangharajta, who's our teacher, my teacher and the teacher of all the order members, held a seminar. He held many seminars actually, and they were all lovingly transcribed, which is great. We've got records of them. So he held a seminar, and this seminar was particularly for a bunch of people who worked in a Buddhist business we had at the time, and that business was a wholesale gift business. So back in those days, like stuff like candles and incense and oil burners and things like that, you couldn't get from like shops like supermarkets. They were a bit more specialised, and there's a few of you nodding for people who can remember that far back. Anyway, this wholesaler sold all stuff like that, and they were all Buddhists, and they were all trying to like really put the teachings into practice in their work, but they were a bit sort of worried really, and they had a real question for Bhante, and the real question for Bhante was, look, we've been here, some of us have been here for 10 years or even 20 years, we're thinking we might spend our whole lives working in this wholesale business, but are we doing the right thing if we want to get enlightened? Or should we be up in a cave in a mountain meditating? Yeah, would that be better? Or at the very least in a retreat centre in Wales or something, meditating. I liked it as a question when I saw it written down, because you could tell it really was real. And then there they were, something about it being Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, the busiest time of the year if you're in that kind of line of work. And they're saying, are we doing the right thing? They were making lots of money, by the way, for things like our retreats. Although that business is now folded, in the end it succumbed to, sort of the financial crises that hit a few years ago. But like a lot of our retreat centres and Buddhist centres are only here because of that business. So they're making money, they're practicing Buddhism, they were given all the money for retreat centres like Adhisthana for people who know it. But they were really concerned, were they doing the right thing? And Bhante was responding to them, and so the first thing he said, if you've ever heard lectures of Bhante, heard him speaking on tape or even met him in person when he was still alive, he speaks a very slow, measured way. So he said something like, well, do you have to practice mindfulness at work? And they were saying, well, yeah, we have to practice mindfulness, but, is that going to get us enlightened? And then he said, well, and does it take energy to do your work? And they're saying, well, yeah, it does take energy, but still, is that the same as getting enlightened? So what Bhante was doing, he was going through, the 5 spiritual faculties and saying, well, you have to practice mindfulness and you have to, have energy. But you could tell they weren't satisfied. They were still saying, okay, we do practice these things, but are we really going to get enlightened? This big weighty meditation book had just come out. Again, the meditation books in those days were more few and far between. There's loads of them now, but in those days it was quite a rare thing for a big book on meditation to come out. So this big book on meditation had just come out in 1993, and they were saying, oh, we've been reading that, and surely we should be off meditating. And Bhante, he said, well, actually, he said, well, what work does is it really confronts you with yourself. He said, you'd have to be very, very good at meditating. When I say good, I don't just mean have all nice spiritual experiences, but you'd have to be really working at the sort of edge of yourself, meditating, or you'd have to have a Zen master with a stick about to whack you to really confront yourself in meditation. But he was saying work confronts you all the time. And so therefore, if you allow it to be, it can actually be, Bhante was arguing, a more effective Dharma practice than meditation. And it's because of that confronting you with yourself. And it's interesting because Bhante himself, as a young man, had a very similar question. Basically, the question was, when you're thinking about enlightenment, what you're really asking is, how do I go beyond ego clinging? How do I go beyond the sort of basic selfishness, basically, that's always looking for what's in it for me in every situation? How do you get beyond that? And that had perplexed Bhante as a much younger man when he was living in India. Bhante, if you don't know, is an Englishman, but who ended up in India through various adventures. And he was practicing as a monk, and he very strongly realised, although he had a very strong meditation practice, that meditation wasn't enough in itself to go beyond ego clinging, because ego clinging is just so wily, as I hope we'll see as I talk on. And what Bhante decided to do was willingly hand his will over to his spiritual teacher. So that was what he did to really confront himself. He just completely of his own volition said, I'm going to do anything my teacher asks me to do. And actually, it was a bit of a funny story because his teacher was very unassuming and hardly asked Bhante to do anything and was always saying to Bhante, well, what do you think? But in the end, his teacher did ask him to do quite a big thing, and Bhante knowingly knew he had decided to do what his teacher asked him, and he did that, which was stay in a particular town alone as a man of about 24 and teach the Dharma. So this same question had been perplexing Bhante. How do you get beyond ego clinging? So back to these people working in the Buddhist warehouse. Bhante said, for example, you've got to really look for situations where you're really confronted. He said, for example, you can really look for, you've put your whole effort into pulling off some amazing deal and then it all goes wrong at the last minute. He said that is an opportunity for insight if you approach it in the right way. And it's very funny in the seminar because they say to him, they're obviously a little bit shocked by that, and they say, oh well, but for that really to be an effective practice, you would have to be aware constantly that insight could arise at any moment. And Bhante just says, well, you're all order members, aren't you? Aren't you aware of that all the time, constantly? So he's slightly pulling them up a little bit. So what he's saying there is, if you're really aware of the possibility of insight that is breaking free of ego clinging, can happen in any moment, the best situation for that to happen in isn't an easy situation when everything's going well. It's actually a hard situation when, for example, all your hopes and dreams are suddenly dashed. Yeah, that is the best. That's the best opportunity for insight to arise. Yeah, if you use that situation well, and hopefully I'm going to unpack as I go a little bit along what using that situation well would mean. So what Bhante is doing with that group of people is teaching them about mind training. Yeah, he's teaching them about mind training, which is, the subject of our seminar. And it's very, very radical, as Kustasara said, where it's actually using difficulties, it's taking difficulties with you onto the path. It's not following the path in spite of difficulties. It's the difficulties are the path. Yeah, it's using seeing the very difficulties as opportunities, and that they are the path. Yeah, and even seeking them out, And well, in this seminar, Bhante's talking about work as presenting difficulties. Really. Well, maybe I'll ask you, what presents us with the most difficulties in life? Maybe I'll just ask. I'll ask the people physically present in this room, but if you've got any answer, you can pop it on the chat. So just go on. What presents us with the most difficulties in life?
Illness.
Sorry?
Illness, for example.
Illness, yeah. Illness certainly presents us with difficulties, yeah. Alex?
Relations with other people.
Relations with other people, yeah. I think relations with other people personally cause me even more difficulty. Well, I haven't been seriously ill in my life, but my biggest difficulties are definitely caused by other people. It's all their fault, basically. If it wasn't for them, I would be fine, yeah. Does that sort of ring? What, did we have anything in the chat from? No, I need to probably give you a little bit more time in the chat. Don't worry, there'll be other questions, those of you online. So illness certainly does, and again, this mind training would be using something like illness as an opportunity, and also other people cause us a great deal of difficulty. Usually when we talk about the difficulties of life, certainly I am usually talking about other people. Does that ring true for others? Yeah. So other people just are basically really annoying, aren't they? Other people, a lot of the time, are really annoying. And quite often they're just annoying. They don't even know they're being annoying. They're just kind of going about their merry way, but actually they're really annoying. There's sort of three categories of the difficulties of other people, broadly speaking. There's people that are just annoying. There's also people that actually hurt you. They hurt you. They hurt me. Yeah, they're not just accidentally doing it. They do something, and it really causes me a great deal of trouble and even hurt. Yeah. So sometimes people do hurt us. And that's very difficult when that happens. And that's going to be roughly the subject of my talk this week, is what do we do when other people actually are more than just annoying, but they've actually hurt us. There's an even worse category than that, which is a sort of variation on that, when not only do they hurt us, but the people that have hurt us are the very people that we really, really, really helped. We really, really, really helped us, and then they just turn around and throw it all right in our face. That's the worst of all. That's betrayal. They sort of, or they've really, really won our trust, and then they just kind of, throw it back at us. Yeah, horrible. That's betrayal. That's next week. How but this week, they've just ordinarily hurt us. Yeah, they're just like so a bit worse than just being annoying, but they've hurt us. Yeah. So, that's our difficulty that we're going to take on the path when other people have hurt us. Brian's looking really keen, aren't he? How are we going to make this the path? Yeah. Okay, so let's just go back a step. So this what Bhante was sort of, I was going to say hinting at, a bit more than hinting at in this seminar, that we use the difficulty, we actually seek out the difficulty, we create a situation that confronts us deliberately. You see, that's why I say meditation isn't necessarily enough, because unless we were meditating really, really actively, it won't confront us, yeah? We need to be meditating very, very hard and fully, and probably really pondering on an existential question or a Zen koan or something like that, which I don't really know anything about, for it to really confront us. Whereas other people, they'll confront us without us even having to do anything about it, So we've got a ready-made arena of practice. So what Bhante is talking about in this seminar, about how we train our minds, was systemised, as those of you who have been coming along to the seminar will have heard, by the Tibetans in round about the 10th century, in different ways. But one of the ways is these 8 verses for training the mind. And why they're quite good, these 8 verses, is they are quite pithy. You can remember them quite easily. And, if you choose to. And as Kuslasar was saying, it's 3 things brought together: the view of shunyata, that all appearances are devoid of, sort of inherent existence. That's the overarching view. In some ways, don't worry about that too much just now, although it is important, or crucially important. The practice, so practice is like the metta bhavana, like we were doing, where we're really cultivating an identification with living beings. We're seeing that all of us, from the point of view of Buddhahood, like Kuslasara said, we're all wandering in samsara. So samsara isn't so much that it's a place, it's a state of being. Basically, it's the unenlightened state of being, samsara. It's and we wander in it. Samsara is seeking happiness without realising what is the true source of happiness, which is generosity and practicing the virtues. Is seeking escape from suffering, but kind of just running straight into the fire, That's what samsara is, and we're all doing it. Some of us possibly more extremely than others, but from the point of view of the Buddha, sometimes I think, if the Buddha was, as it were, watching us, he'd just be almost going, oh no, please don't run into that fire again. As he sees me, getting resentful, getting angry, sees us all doing those things. It's like, you can just imagine the Buddha thinking, don't they realise it's just going to bring them more misery? They think it's going to get them away from suffering by, retaliating or cold shouldering this person that snubbed them or something, but actually it's just heaping up more misery, yeah? So that's what samsara is, seeking happiness without realising where happiness lies, and seeking to escape from suffering, but inadvertently running straight into suffering. We're all doing that. So when we talk about cultivating an identification with beings, that's the deepest identification, really seeing that we're all doing this, and then so that we ourselves are sort of awakened to, what a pity, I want to help, that bodhisattva attitude, the mind of bodhicitta, is the mind that wants to give one's merit and wants to actually take the suffering upon oneself even. And that's very, very lofty ideal, especially the ideal of taking the suffering upon oneself. At the same time, I always think it's important with these things to know that we've all, although it's lofty, we've all probably had a little taste of it here and there. I was just thinking of this myself. There's a friend of mine, he's had such bad luck this year. He had a terrible injury earlier on this year, very bad injury. Had to cancel everything, all his retreats and everything. He's just like recovering from the injury, and like then today he's just about to go on retreat on Friday. Now he's got COVID, he can't go on his retreat, and like I think this is true. May something strike me down if it isn't true, but I definitely feel, oh, I wish I had got it. I wish I'd got COVID instead of him. Like, I wish I could, I'd not go on my retreat if he could go. Of course, you can't. That's not going, just wishing it won't make it happen, but it's that feeling of, oh, God, like, why did it have to happen to him? Or, I would have, if I could have taken that upon myself, I would have, And I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking and feeling that. Do people recognise that as a feeling that they've had? Maybe, at least for someone you really love, at least if for a little bit of suffering, you might not die for them. You might die for them if it's your child, but, you might, wish you had their headache or something, or wish you had, so we've all had it a little bit. A bodhisattva, someone with a mind of bodhicitta, would have that for all beings all the time. That attitude of, I take their suffering gladly. Because strangely enough, it's not like being a martyr in the pejorative sense of martyrdom. It wouldn't be suffering in the same way if you'd willingly taken it. You'd have transformed it. It still would be the headache if you could do such a thing, but it wouldn't, I don't know, because you'd gladly done it, it would be quite different, yeah? So that's an aspect of that's all in with these mind trainings, but the real thing we're looking at with these mind trainings is the action. How do we express that in our everyday lives, yeah? And what we're trying to do with these mind training verses is we're trying to cultivate a set of attitudes that overcome our clinging to self, yeah? Our sort of me in the middle of it all. And the basic attitude is, as I've already been saying, is welcoming difficulties, actually welcoming them. So you treat the annoying person as rare, like a treasure, yeah? So you actually, rather than going, if only they would just get out of my way, I could practice much better. You actually completely turn that around and think that annoying person is like a rare treasure. You treat the person who's betrayed you like a great spiritual teacher. And the person who's hurt you, you sort of give them the victory. Yeah, you give them the victory. In other words, you don't hurt them back. Yeah, you don't seek revenge. So these are practices. So they're not like kind of metaphysical truths, Why is that important to say? Like, it's not trying to say that the person who's been cruel hasn't been cruel. Maybe they really have been cruel, and maybe on that level something needs to be done about that, yeah? So it's not like saying they are a great spiritual teacher when actually they really have been cruel. It's like in order, it's a method, yeah? It's in order to uproot this self-clinging that's so deep, it's below the level of consciousness, it's pre-conscious rather than subconscious. It's water we swim in, it's the air we breathe, it's so deep that we can't even see it in a way. In order to uproot that, we treat that as an as if. I would treat the person who's betrayed me as if they're my great teacher, you know. They might, do you see what I mean? That's quite important. Yeah, good. People are nodding. I hope you're nodding from Dublin and India as well. Yeah? Because we're trying to develop this new mind of bodhicitta, yeah? Which is powered only by metta, yeah? This mind of bodhicitta, it's completely free from ego clinging. It's completely free from that what's in it for me. That we you see, this ego clinging is, we can't help it. It's not a moral issue, really. It's not that we're bad because of self-clinging. It just comes with being human. It's why we're human. It's why we're embodied, according to the Buddhist teachings. It's why we've taken rebirth. But it can be undone, according to the Buddha. So it's not our fault that we have this basic notion of what's in it for me. But it's also, according to the Buddha, it's the cause of all our suffering. And that was the huge discovery of the Buddha, that self-clinging, which up until that point, up until before the Buddha was the Buddha, was just taken for granted as part and parcel of being human, and there was nothing you could do about it. And probably wasn't even noticed as a thing, because it just felt such a common sense approach to life of course, I experience myself as the centre, as everything. But the Buddha realised that there was a way of being that was completely free of that, and that the energy released on realising that freedom. I always think it's like splitting the atom, you know. An untold amount of energy is released, and it expresses itself in a fellow feeling, just compassion, just overflowing compassion. So that's why we're trying to uproot this, and a method of uprooting this is to see the difficult people not as a nuisance, not as a barrier to spiritual life, but as a treasure. Why is this? It's because it gives us a chance to deal with this ego clinging. We can't deal with it head on. It'd be like the eye trying to see itself or something. We can only deal with it when it expresses itself. And how it expresses itself is in our reactions to those people, yeah? So it expresses itself when every time we feel, I can't believe they just did that, you know, every time we feel like I'm not going to let them get away with that. Then it's revealed. Subhuti, another one of our very, very experienced Dharma teachers here at the Buddhist Center, he says, when we experience a reaction, that is our ego clinging, breaking the surface of our being. It's showing itself to us, and that's why it's that's why these very annoying people are the treasure, because nice people who are just nice to us and sort of stroking our ego, as it were, won't get our hackles to rise. Yeah, it's only when our hackles rise we can go, oh, there's my hackles rising. Oh, what's going on? What's going on? So maybe I'll just sort of pause there to see if you recognise that. So do people recognise that when that sort of sense of our hackles rising when someone does us wrong? Yeah? What kind of maybe I'll pause there and ask you, and people watching from wherever you are, India, Ireland, etc., can join in with these responses. So when you think of when someone's recently done you wrong, has everybody had that experience of someone doing them wrong? Is it just me? I experience it all the time. Yeah. So when someone does it wrong, what kind of responses do you have when somebody does you wrong? How do you experience when your hackles rise? How do you experience that? People can jot down sort of responses in the chat, but maybe I'll have one or two from the room here.
My body temperature goes up.
Yeah, mine too. Yeah, it goes right up. And what does your voice want to say?
What does my voice want to
Yeah,
say?
what do you want to say or do to them? Or
I'm not Scottish. Well, I'd say I've changed over the years,
Yeah.
but my probably I would jump in and either defend myself or go against them. Now I like to think that I have a little gap and can
Yeah.
respond a bit better, but
yeah,
I definitely would feel it physically.
Yeah.
I think that's harder
Yeah.
to train yourself not to
okay.
get it. So.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. So do people? So although I asked for a few questions, I wanted responses. I'll stay with it. So do other people get that the body temperature goes up? That's the way I experience it. So it's very, very interesting, and this goes back again. I'll refer back to this seminar Banting. It's almost like there's two lines of approach to what we can do. So far, if you've been meditating for any length of time or even practicing in any other way, you know that what meditation is creates a little gap so that you have a chance to calm down and not just let the temperature keep rising and do something that you might regret, yeah? And that's very, very good, yeah? That's very, very good. And this mind training is a different line of approach, and it is saying, now this is quite hard to properly explain, but that actually, as long as so you've got to be sure that you're not going to say something or even do something that you regret. But then the mind training said, actually experience that heat, yeah? Actually don't try and too quickly calm it down. As long as you're sure you're not going to cause any damage to anyone. If you think you're going to cause any damage to anyone, try and calm down, yeah? Or walk away or something. But if you're sure you're not, if you feel a bit more confident, you can feel that heat. And what that heat is this underlying self-clinging shooting up to the surface, yeah. So that is that's giving you a chance to transform it. Usually you haven't got a chance to transform it because it's all underneath. And what that might be, so you've got the heat, and if it were to give voice, it might be saying something like, I don't know, I'm not going to let them get away with that, or something like that. You feel completely justified, and that somehow they shouldn't have done that thing, and they've got to somehow be punished, even though because we're quite sophisticated, we'll dress that up in a kind of I'm doing it, you have some rationalization, but really you don't want them to get away with that, yeah. But this text is saying, it's so hard to make this sound like any sensible thing to do, because in a way it goes against common sense. This text is saying, in a sense, let them win, and not, it might be, they might have done something unskillful, in which case that might have to be dealt with on its own level, but in terms of you, maybe another way of putting it is, maybe a better way of putting it is let them win, but it's asking yourself, why am I reacting even though they've done this terrible, mean, awful, dreadful thing that actually does deserve that they're punished, why am I reacting? Yeah, why am I reacting? And sorry, I asked for questions then, I'm still talking on, but I will come back. So why we're reacting is because the ego clinging, sustains itself by retaliation. So if we feel hurt or diminished, we have to get our own back, or even that phrase is quite interesting, get our own back. I have to feel, no, I'm in charge again, yeah? And we'll do that in different ways. Yeah, we might be by some sort of wanting to punish, even in a subtle way, or take revenge in a way, or to tell a story about how bad that person is. You really want everybody else to agree with you, don't you? I'm looking at you, but I'm sure, you know, like, say somebody's really, really hurt you. What happens? What do you feel like if somebody else likes that person? Any responses? What does that feel like? If somebody else says, no, they're a great person. What does that feel like? Yeah?
You want them to perhaps validate your experience of that other person.
Yeah.
Perhaps you might, like you say, in a sophisticated way,
Yeah.
reveal
Yeah.
that you have some cause for displeasure,
Yeah.
and you want that to be echoed
Yeah.
perhaps in the
Yeah.
other person.
Yeah. Yes, you do. Yeah, and I'll come on to you in a minute, Henry. Yes, you do. You want that to be validated by another person's. Yeah, and you want it. You really want that very, very strongly. It can feel somehow a bit unbearable if somebody else, you know, dares to like them, or dares to sort of say, well, you know, maybe they had a point or something, or maybe they were just trying to, you know, they didn't, whatever. You know, that can feel almost unbearable, because we need to tell that story about how bad the other person was. Yeah, Henry, what were you going to think?
Sometimes when I know the person is the cause
Yeah.
of my displeasure, I want them to experience what I go through as well.
Ah,
I want
yeah.
to be the cause of their experience.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, that's very interesting. If they've hurt us, or somehow been the cause of our pain, we somehow feel that the world will only be put to rights again when they've suffered equally as badly. And then we think, then we tell ourselves, then that'll be fine, they'll know, you know, yeah. Yeah. Good. Do people recognise those sort of things? Quite natural in a way, but yeah. I'll come back to you in a minute, Brian. I just want to see if there's anyone on the...
Yes, so
Yes.
we have Wendy said she feels disbelief and anger.
Yeah.
Derek says he paces the floor and is too snappy to see another side to it. Annie says she feels threatened.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting that we're pacing the floor and we're feeling threatened, and maybe we have been threatened, you know. So this is what's quite interesting. It's not that the other person is necessarily blameless, but there's still the question, why am I reacting? Yeah. So we might feel threatened, but we could feel threatened calmly, or we could feel threatened reactively, you see. So the reaction is the extra thing that we're adding in. So what we're doing is, let's see if I can just make sure I've completely spelled it out. So we're taking these moments when it's normal, even in a way healthy, to react, yeah? But we're deliberately, as a method, we're using these as a pointer to ego clinging, yeah? So we're doing this is we're deciding, I'm going to take this on as a mind training, yeah? In order to develop the new mind of bodhicitta, which is free and blissful, yeah? So, but that is a deliberate, conscious thing we're doing. So, how to do this? I'll try and chunk it down to even more practical terms for the last little bit. Is how to practice this in the face of someone who's hurt us, is to realise that there's never an excuse for no practicing, yeah? And another way of putting that is getting out of a sort of victim mentality. The victim mentality, how I experience it, that says, okay, I've had it. Like, nobody can expect me to be skillful in the face of what's just happened to me, you know. I've had it now, you know. I've been skillful up till now, but no, that's just like, you know, I'm justified in just losing the plot now, you know. It's a bit like, kind of, that's it, yeah. Does that sort of ring a bell? That sort of, yeah. So there's actually a Buddhist word for victim mentality, and it's, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, it's kausidya, K-A-U-S-I-D-Y-A, kausidya. And that it's a sort of laziness. It creates a story and lives by it, yeah? And it's completely adept at justifying itself to itself, yeah? And basically what it's doing is creating a rationale for stopping being skillful, for stopping being creative. And I'll have, in all sorts of little stories, I caught myself with one the other day. I was convinced that somebody had really kind of gone beyond the pale in what they'd done in relation to me. And I thought, well, no, hang on, if I'm skillful, like, no one will ever know how bad they've been. But, you know, and then it starts to break down because but then I have to ask myself, well, why is that so important? Why is it so important to me that everybody, you know, it's got to be the headline news of how bad this person's been, you know? So actually, as soon as you say it, you realise it's utterly ridiculous. But do people recognise that it'll somehow be allowing them to get away with it, you know? So what that victim mentality will do in one way or another, it'll always create a rationale for itself. You know, there's all sorts of ways it expresses itself, like, now look what you've made me do, or it might even express itself not so much in words by heavy sighing and stuff like that, you know, but it's definitely, it creates a little closed loop where you don't have to be skillful anymore. Or even worse than that, where you actually convince yourself that it wouldn't be good to be skillful. You know, it'd be much better to be in a bad mood and a sulk and a temper and a, you know, huff, yeah? Does that sort of make sense to people? Do people know that in your experience? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I know, we do that. So, but hopefully the other way around gives us a way to practice. So what we've got to keep reminding ourselves, so the literal text of the verse is, give the other person the victory. I wonder if an even more helpful way of looking at it is, there's never an excuse for being unskillful. Yeah, that'd be another way of translating it. There's never an excuse for being unskillful. If we realise that, then we'd realise that that person who's hurt us really is precious, yeah, because they've taught us something that's really good, which is there's never an excuse for being unskillful. Do you see what I mean? If we really learned that. And we would be the happier for realising that. If we go in a like huff and a bad mood and a sulk, who suffers? Ourselves, don't we? You know, I mean, it's so crazy that we do that. So does that sort of does that give you a way to practice this idea of not getting into this victim, even if someone really has hurt? That doesn't mean you're condoning their behaviour. Do you see what I mean? That doesn't mean maybe their behaviour needs to be dealt with. It's not saying that, it's not trying to pretend they've done a good thing when actually maybe they've done a bad thing. But it's actually saying, okay, they've done this thing, but if I'm then turning that into a self-fulfilling, that will close loop story that I'm now living by, that means that I don't have to be creative anymore, then we're actually harming ourselves. But if we can turn that around and go, no matter what they've done, I can still be creative. Then that's the opposite of laziness. That's the Buddhist quality is virya, which usually means energy, but it's a sort of mental energy that's always looking for the skillful. It never ceases in looking for the skillful. So this approach means that we actually deliberately seek out difficult situations. We deliberately don't just, actually we don't need to seek them out, because they'll come to us, but when a difficult situation comes, rather than saying, oh no, I was practicing really well until this annoying person came along and started really bothering me, it's an attitude that says, oh good, this gives me something that I can really, will really help me deepen my practice. And the way to do it is, first of all, don't get into victim mentality. That's step one. And then if you can really feel that reaction, really feel the burning, the physical burning of it, really feel that, don't try and suppress it, and don't even try and pacify it, sort of dare to feel it, and then ask yourself, what's threatened, yeah? What's threatened? And what you're trying to get to, now you can't do this intellectually, but eventually what you're trying to get to is realise that all you're defending is a pattern of defensiveness. Because there's nothing, because of this deeper truth of shunyata, there's no fixed me or fixed self to defend in the first place. What we think of as a me is just a patterning. It's like, I always think of, on a dark night, a sparkler going round and round, and it looks like a solid circle, but it's just a little bit of light going round, but you can draw with it and make patterns. That's what we are. We are sort of patterning, yeah? So if we could see that all we're defending is a pattern of defensiveness, what do you think would happen? What do you think we'd do if we could really, really see that? What do you think our response would be if we saw that all we were defending, here we were getting in a crazy bad mood, going kind of nuts at someone, and then suddenly we saw that all we were defending was a pattern of defensiveness? What would that experience be like, or how might we respond?
You let it go.
You'd
let it go.
You'd let it go, yeah. You'd let it go. And what would happen when you let it? How would that feel?
Peaceful.
Peaceful? Yeah.
Lighter. Lighter.
Lighter, yeah.
Distanced.
Distant. That's interesting. What are you thinking when you say distant? What would you be distant from?
From the world of experiences generated by the ego, in the way that, like you're saying, it like the sparkler going round.
Yeah.
So the person is like a shot fired. It's a shot in the dark.
Yeah.
And so that becomes like a mirage almost.
Okay, so you'd see life as a mirage, yeah. So in some ways you wouldn't take it all so seriously. So it'd be hopefully a positive distance, but
Yeah.
the experience would, it'd be a sort of distance but also a connection in a way, and you wouldn't be taking it all so seriously. A bit like it's a little bit like, you know, like say you were joining in a game with a child, you'd still be playing it and connecting with the child, but you know how like kids like get like super upset if they lose the game or something. You wouldn't. It'd be distant in that way. You would see that it was what you thought taken so seriously was just more like a mirage or a game. But it wouldn't be. You still feel connected with people. Yeah. Anything from our friends about how that would feel if you really saw that all you were defending was a pattern of defensiveness.
No responses to that.
No responses. So you'd let go, you'd feel lighter, you'd feel freer, and I think you'd start to laugh, you know. I think you'd start to laugh because you'd realise that you'd realise how silly you'd been, you know. And the laugh would be a laughter of relief and release. That you'd caused yourself so much trouble, but you didn't need to, yeah? Now you can only get to that by going through it, if you see what I mean. You can't talk yourself into that, so you can't if somebody's really hurt you, it's not that I'm saying you've got to just laugh and say, oh, it's all a joke or something. It's not. You only get to it by really feeling that fire that wants to retaliate, that fire that's like, how dare they? I'm not going to let them get away with this. You've got to really feel that, but then see it for what it is. Yeah, let it burn through you. Yeah, sort of dare to let it burn through you. It won't. You can't think your way to that. You can't. All this is far below the level of thinking power, yeah? So I'm just putting that as a sort of caveat. So that's the sort of deepest level of it, is that laughter of freedom. But the sort of halfway to that is really not getting into that sort of victim mentality story. And the way to not do that is to realise that there's never an excuse, in a way, not allowing yourself to make an excuse for not being skillful, no matter what's happened. Actually, one can always be skillful, but usually what stops us being skillful is, well, it must always be what stops us being skillful is the sort of sulkiness of my own mind. That's what stops me being skillful. That's what kind of, that bit that goes, no, that's it, had enough, I'm not playing anymore. Yeah.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
So I guess sometimes when I am sulking, it's
Yeah.
kind of easy to see what the skillful thing would be, and I sort of know that I'm not choosing it.
Yeah.
But I think I find it much, and it's usually by that point then then I'm laughing at myself by that point.
Okay, yeah.
Which is good, or I enjoy that by that point, and then I'm over it effectively. But what I find much more challenging is when I realise, like say I've felt hurt by something, and then I feel like I just feel hurt and I feel unable to see what's skillful, maybe. So I don't know I'm not sure what is skillful in a specific context.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, and I'll just repeat the questions just for the benefit of everyone here. So sometimes we feel hurt, we feel in pain, and we just don't know what's skillful.
Yeah.
And I think that's very common. We don't know what's skillful. So I would say two things. One is just start by feeling that feeling of pain, but the first skillful thing is not to create a story about it, either a story about the other person or ourselves. So that's refraining from doing something unskillful, which is skillful in itself. So that's step one. So what you'll notice is your mind will want to create a story. That's how our mind tries to get out of the pain. And depending on your personality, that story, well, basically it's going to go two ways. You're either going to blame the other person or blame yourself, or sometimes you ricochet between them, yeah? So you're either going to, you know, but both of them are stories. Or blame life. I knew this would happen. This always happens to me. Da da da. Or you blame them. You want to in some way punish them. So that's what I mean by story. So every time you notice that, the skillful thing to do is just come back to the bare sensation. Yeah. So that's how to be skillful. And then once you've done that for a while, just then you can start exploring the reaction, yeah? Does that make sense? Yeah. It's not easy. Yeah. But it's very hard. All this is hard practice, you know? It's very, very challenging. Yeah. So what we're going to, there's always, the time always goes quick, and I think we're sort of at time, but we're going to just end with a tiny little ritual. And what we're going to do is, the figure on the shrine is Vajrasattva, who symbolises this freedom of mind and heart. And there's a mantra associated with this archetypal figure of Vajrasattva. It's 100 syllables. And the mantra has within it that laughter of freedom when you realise that there's no me to defend, yeah? And there's just complete freedom. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to dim the lights, and those of us who know the mantra are going to chant that mantra 3 times, and then I'll just ring a bell, and then that'll be the end of the class. And I hope very much that at least some of what I've said has given you a useful way to practice going forward. So, just dim the lights. Sit for a moment, just letting go of all the words. Vajrasattva symbolising that all things are pure by nature. And I too am pure by nature. Pure as in shunyata. Om Vajrasattva Sammaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tvinopatishta Ridho me bhava Sutosho me bhava Suposho me bhava Anarakto me bhava Sarva siddhi me pricha Sarva karma sucha me Chitam shriya kuru hum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan sarvat bhagata Vajramame muncha Vairi bhava Mahasamaya sattva Ahom Pat Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tvinopatishta Ridho me bhava Sutosho me bhava Suposho me bhava Anarakto me bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Precha, Sarva Karma Sucha Me, Chitam Shriya Kuru Hum, Ha 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 Ho, Bhagavan Sarvatvagata, Rajam Me Muncha, Vairi Bhava, Mahasamya Sattva, Ahum Pass. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Thenopatishta Drito Me Bhava Sutasho Me Bhava Supasho Me Bhava Anarakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Precha Sarva Karma Sucha Me Chitam Shriya Kuru Hum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarvatvagata Vajramane Muncha Vari Bhava Mahasamya Sattva Ahum Pat. Evening together, so very enjoyable and meaningful to spend the evening with you all, and to all of you tuning in online, and do come back next week for the next mind training verse, which is on the subject of betrayal. So see you soon.